there was a very fast collapse catastrophist school who thought like we're all going back to the Stone Age like tomorrow. And there were quieter voices that got less attention saying, oh, well, if you look at history, these things generally take generations to play out. And uh, over time, I came to fall into the second camp, that there's a lot of fat in the system that can be trimmed out. One thing that was really interesting that I learned was that the personal internal combustion engine for like gasoline fueled cars was designed because gasoline was a waste product in the early era of oil production. So the really light fractions were good for like running planes and petrochemicals. The really heavy fractions were good for heavy machinery, but there were oil refiners that were just having to pour the gasoline, the middle fractions, into rivers because nobody wanted to buy it. So they had to engineer a way for society to consume this excess.
Interesting. And that's kind of at the heart of industrial growth at some point, right? From what I understand, is that you have to find a way to, in order to maximize your efficiency, you need to make sure that every part of your process is marketable, essentially.
Absolutely, yes.
And this is kind of like plays into our food supplies and everything else. Like people look at their foods and like, why do I have 100 ingredients in my peanut butter? It's like, well, somebody had to sell something to somebody, basically.
Yes, and you only have to look at. I think North Korea is a really good example about how the per person resource consumption can fall dramatically, but you still have something that a system that has some degree of industrial technology. The average person is living a pretty much medieval lifestyle, but they still maintain cohesion and a degree of technical proficiency.
What do you mean that the average person's living a medieval lifestyle?
Like they're mostly peasants, right?
Yeah, they're mostly peasants living in remote countryside. But the central authority still has access to high technology. So a prolonged intermediate phase of that nature is likely. I think that's the most likely outcome.
I want to know more about North Korea, but I want to let's put a pin in that. So I'll write it down that we can come back to it.
Again, all of this resource stuff is other people have done it better. And
who are some of your favorite authors on that subject?
Oh, see, at the time, probably the Post Carbon Institute would be a good place. They did a really good animated series. There's No Tomorrow or something. Yeah, again, it's one of these amazing things that a group of very intelligent, very interested people put together, and it got almost no attention.
Because I feel like every time I turn on YouTube, there's like a new catastrophism plan for what's, maybe it's just my YouTube channel for a while there.
Yeah, I think whenever somebody talks about what the algorithm feeds them, I'm always like, are you telling on yourself?
It hasn't been that way in a while. I feel like there was some period of time where we were going down the whole 9/11 truther and all this stuff, and we were just getting every conspiracy theory in the world.
And I mean, catastrophe sells, right? I think that something that you said about that you encountered a lot of voices that were saying that it was imminent, while there were other people in the background who were saying that, well, it's probably going to take a while. The story of it's going to take a while is a lot less sexy, because that means that maybe you can work on it, maybe you can do something about it, maybe you can put in plans, maybe it's not going to be devastating, maybe you won't be able to go out in a blaze of glory over the course of your own lifetime, and instead you'll have to just be part of this weird human project that we're all part of. And that's just... Yeah. I think that people have been promising the end of the world since there was the conception of a world. Like, I think that's just baked in.
It's baked in.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it happen too, right? Like, especially places like Europe or Mediterranean or Mesoamerica, right? The Aztecs came up having seen the Teotihuacanis disappear, and they saw the ghosts of those civilizations. And I guess, like, out here in America, we don't have ruins of giant cities to look back upon in the same way.
Well, this brings up an interesting post I did a while ago. It's titled "The Diminishing Returns on Collapse." So I looked at mass extinctions through the history of the planet, and if you actually look, the recovery happens faster each time. So the biosphere is getting better at enduring like mass extinction events. And likewise, if you look at civilizations and their collapses after they reach peaks of complexity, we're learning ways of bouncing back faster. And that kind of makes sense. Like the more often you practice doing something, the better. The flip side of that as well is, I think I did a post against permanence. So we have this drive that we want stability, and we imagine this utopia where everything's perfect forever. I would actually argue that that isn't the optimum solution in complex systems, that a system of fluctuating levels of complexity actually allows the system to tap into new possibilities. Whereas if you achieve this perfect utopia and it never changes, what you're actually doing is setting yourself up for a brittle system that when it does collapse, it will be much more devastating.